Really pleased to introduce Rocky Gregory. He's the Global Enterprise Wireless Architect at Nike, and Shannon Kurtz from the CIO office at IBM. And Rocky, if you're ready, let's start with you. Are you there, Rocky?
I'm here.
Excellent. So, Rocky, you and your team have been Nike customers using mobile Eye and Sapphire Eye for over a year now. So what have your takeaways been in terms of the business value you've been able to get out of our solutions?
Yeah, I think there have been a few. One that was mentioned a few times already that Mark went into, mean time to repair. So, we have a staff responsible for a multitude of different environments, any environment you can imagine, distribution, carpeted space, retail, and having that kind of visibility that we can't get asking an end user, that we can't really do the interactive troubleshooting with someone on a retail floor, and we can't get to our campus right now. So as we're doing a campus refresh for the infrastructure that supports about 22,000 users a day, and we're doing it without people on site. So we've been able to really leverage the Sapphire Eyes and take a look at the optimization that we can do to kind of make it the best network it can be without having end user feedback. So that's been a huge value. Again, that mean time to repair, I think I picked it up from Keith Parsons somewhere along the line that most wireless issues aren't. So having visibility into stuff like DNS, DHCP, we had what looked to be a connectivity issue in our newly refreshed buildings as part of our WHQ refresh, and found pretty quickly that it was DHCP. So it looked like wireless. It's the first thing to blame, but it gave us that quick visibility so that we could more quickly get to the root cause analysis. So kind of across the entire environment, we've been able to use the 7SIGNAL products, both practically. So we've got an issue with robots that are misbehaving. We can ship a Sapphire Eye, get some quick visibility, load mobile Eye onto a handheld, have someone go do a walk of the environment. And then strategically, as we look at the WHQ refresh, being able to look at our metrics and stare at those metrics and figure out, what optimizations we can make. I don't know, kind of a roundabout answer. I hope that hit it though.
Mean time to repair really resonates. I like to talk about mean time to innocence.
Right,
because like you said, so many issues really are not Wi-Fi issues, not issues between those 802.11 radios, but some other related service on the network having an issue.
Exactly. Yeah, mean time to blame.
So Rocky, did what you heard from the IDC report from Mark, did that match some of what you guys have found?
It did. It does resonate pretty well. I certainly have not reduced staff, but I'm able to have staff be more efficient with their time. So when ticket handling time goes down, it means project time goes up, and projects don't go away. They just keep getting piled on. So we've got a pretty significant backlog, and the more tools that I can give my team to quickly diagnose issues or to get out in front of issues, the more time we've got to dedicate to projects. So it does lower the overall handling time and help with those efforts that are more strategic for the group.
Great, thanks, Rocky. Another point I thought was interesting, and I think a lot of our customers have this experience too, is with Mobile Eye and Sapphire Eye deployed, they start discovering, smaller issues that cause some, pain and grief for end users, but they haven't quite crossed that threshold yet where they're going to call the help desk and, be willing to engage in in that process of troubleshooting with the help desk. So you might discover issues you didn't know were there that people are just simply tolerating, and be able to get those resolved um, for everyone's benefit.
It's very easy to get wrapped up in the technology here, and you know, these solutions offer us so much leverage to better run our networks and such. I'm very interested on the services side of the fence and what suppliers do besides just provide you technology solutions. Is, you know, when you look at your own implementation and where you are, and even onboarding originally to where you are now and trying to do even more things with the 7SIGNAL product, and you'll see a roadmap next. I hear from Simon as well. So from that standpoint, what are the service related things that 7SIGNAL do that really help you move faster, you know, leverage their product even more so than what you would do on your own? And I know that networking people are highly self-reliant, as you heard by the examples with Shannon doing a lot of Ansible work and their own database and all that stuff. But you know, the kind of things that 7SIGNAL have done to help you along the way.
I think kind of the ongoing training of my team has been just out of this world. I've got a primary person who works with 7SIGNAL. I needed depth of coverage, so we had to bring another engineer up to speed, and just 7SIGNAL's willingness to get on the phone and do individualized training. And in those trainings, it's not just here's how you use the tool, but it's been kind of augmenting the overall wireless training. You know, an issue was brought up of a bunch of channel changes going on because of what could be a Cisco bug or could be a Cisco feature, depending on who you ask. And, you know, rather than just kind of pointing out, here's where you would find channel changes, the 7SIGNAL rep said, okay, this may be a concern that you're seeing this, and pointed out an issue that may have gone unnoticed. So, you know, there's that piece where it's coaching on the overall technology that my staff is getting beyond just the tool that we use to monitor that technology. And further, those webinars are just absolutely powerful. They're not sales pitches. My team, I encourage them to join them when they can. And that, I think, speaks to their overall commitment to people in the industry, not just customers in the industry. So I've been overwhelmed with, overjoyed with the support that we've gotten, kind of, even though we've you know, gotten to the point where we've done our major purchase, we've done our, we've started our deployments, we've got our deployments rolling, we're still getting this ongoing hand-holding in the care and feeding and training.
Why don't we transition to a question more around budgets? So why don't we start with you, Rocky? How are you justifying the 7SIGNAL spend in your budget at Nike?
It's a really good question. So a lot of, since wireless problems can be so nebulous and it's the most visible, invisible thing in the network, we can get a really bad rap about our ticket handling time and about nagging issues. And really, we've justified, especially in our HQ campus refresh, the justification has been we're going to proactively know when there are issues rather than waiting for the phone to ring. So we can reduce that ticket handling time significantly by knowing the issue exists, hopefully before end users do and before we get that phone call. So that's been, you know, kind of pain that we felt historically, and having an antidote for it has been the biggest justification that we've been able to come up with, and it's worked. Getting the client side view as well as the network side view, so keeping the network honest has been a big selling point internally to get that budget.
How has 7SIGNAL continued to play a role through the COVID-19 pandemic? Is this part of your larger business continuity plan? And is remote work at Nike and at IBM here to stay?
It's interesting and probably not the best answer, but Nike doesn't actually provide support to home users' networks. Our agents go, the mobile eye agents go on the machines of the people who are actually at the office. But the opposite is what's been of value to me, which is that our campus goes into complete lockdown where only essential staff are allowed. Some of those essential staff are cabling vendors helping us get our refresh done. So the value has been for my team to be able to go in and look at sensors as we bring up a new building and see how that building's behaving when they can't get to the campus. So it's been kind of the opposite of what I think people expect the value to be in, that we don't support those home users, but my engineering staff at home are getting visibility, trending, data on how the new network is performing without having to go into the giant campus and the hot zone that it could be if we had an infection.
But what's 7SIGNAL's role in the larger infrastructure plans for 2021 and beyond? We've heard from IDC and others that spending is being diverted from refreshing and expansion to productivity and monitoring. So Mark, any comment before we go to Shannon and Rocky?
I found it, I'll liken it to Shannon's experience that she's doing, the concentration on finding out a lot more about what's going on in her network. And I liked, you talked about this movement where you're seeing AP tick up in terms of activity on the network. So that's like an indication of how that visibility can really affect how you operate. And obviously, everyone, as bad as COVID has been, for a lot of folks, there are some advantages to it. The buildings are empty. It is time to upgrade. It is time to do things. And obviously, if you're freeing up people from having to diagnose work from home problems, suddenly they can look at new technologies and do upgrades and optimize the existing network. These are all significant advantages that pay a lot of dividends down the road. And those are things that I must say, even in our ROI studies, those are more some of the softer justifications that you hear from people, that they may not have data. They don't have data on how does that make the business more nimble, because there isn't a return yet for it. But undoubtedly, in this digital world, being successful is about being nimble and being ready and being able to adopt new applications onto your network at a moment's notice without generating suddenly a lot more trouble tickets and things. So, people don't put a price on that, but that is a major gain if, again, your network is far more ready to do things. And that has to do with infrastructure spending as well. I mean, and you look at a lot of the new infrastructure spending, a lot of people were doing the same old prior to COVID. And they're realizing that networks need to be far more dynamic and elastic. And that's leading them to examine more of the technologies that allow for greater flexibility and elasticity. I talked about the cloud uptick that we're seeing from people, but also, that movement towards a more mobile workforce, an emphasis on Wi-Fi. Are we going to, in new sites, are we going to run the LAN switch anymore and run a wire to everyone's desktop, everyone's desk space? Well, the reality is, does anyone have a desk space anymore? I mean, these are all things that are to be worked out. One of the subjects of our study was a major office furniture manufacturer, and they have all kinds of different layouts for customers to view in terms of how they want their offices to look like. And in there, it was all about wireless. No one's worried about running cables to every every place. And so from that perspective, Wi-Fi is the dominant connectivity. So that becomes a major factor in terms of AP capacities and surveys and how you're laying things out, and contention across wireless and security, segmentation. I mean, all of those things start to pop up as wireless becomes the dominant structure that we're connecting to. And that has a lot to do with, you know, new technologies like a 5G, where we're seeing a lot of activity, especially in the service provider space. And this is causing the service providers to be a lot more aware of what's running across their network. You know, they've been looking for ways of adding value besides just selling bandwidth and circuits forever and ever. But those bandwidth and circuits were fairly staid and static, and they ran from point A to point B. And so they were pretty easy to kind of keep track of. And hey, you ran just, you know, that's why we ran all that dark fiber. So it's easy to just turn some new ones on. Well, in the 5G world, it's very different in terms of network designs and the things you have to worry about, capacity planning. And again, being able, and service providers are always looking to add value on top of selling bandwidth or even wireless connections. So from that perspective, service providers are really investing a lot in analytics and trying to understand, again, how the networks are running and how they can monetize the services that they're presenting to end users. And remember, 5G is not only something that's being promoted as a wide area network component, it is also being promoted as a local area network environment as well. So from that perspective, a lot of those things that apply in a Wi-Fi 6 environment, older Wi-Fi environment, those things are going to translate into the private 5G networks. And they will also translate across the larger spectrum in the wide area network for 5G as well. And SD-WAN is another technology that I think of with the flexibility that it provides for remote branches. Maybe it's a remote branch of one. When we do maybe roll out enterprise networking gear into people's homes, you saw some announcements by Spectrum and Cisco recently where they're offering a package where somebody gets a Cisco device that's basically a corporate device that they're putting inside of their home network. And the flexibility of SD-WAN products, the whole issue of being software defined, enables that product and that technology to be more flexible. That has to be driven by data and analytics and all those decisions that are made as a result of that to form the SD-WAN so that it's performing up to snuff, depending on what the user's requirements are in those locations.
Thanks, Mark. And why don't we go to Rocky here? So Rocky, where do you see 7SIGNAL fitting into Nike's larger infrastructure plans going forward?
Yeah, I think that the buzzword right now, at least at Nike, but I think industry-wide, is observability, right? We need to be able to have instrumentation in all of our environments that gives us a holistic view. And for Nike, the wireless infrastructure continues to become more and more critical. So we're, you know, refreshing our world headquarters, but at the same time, we're doing a complete refresh of technologies at our Asia headquarters and our Europe headquarters. And 7SIGNAL is critical to the success of those two pieces and is quickly becoming critical infrastructure for us. So without that observability and instrumentation, we extend that mean time to blame. And so it's key for success of those new refreshes. And, you know, it's becoming key infrastructure for the places that I don't have bodies. So our distribution centers, it's going to become key infrastructure there for us to be able to, when I can't send someone out with a spectrum analyzer and I can't send someone out with Ekahau and I can't send someone out to stand on the floor and do throughput testing, it's going to become really key to that infrastructure going forward to be able to have that remote observability.
Let's go back to Rocky. Here's a question from our audience. How many FTEs do you need to dedicate to focus on analyzing data provided and maintaining the tools?
Wow, that is a great question. So I have one FTE who probably spends 70% of his time in the tool. And that's pretty proactive. So he spends a lot of time looking at what are the best tests for us to run, coming up with what our baseline should be, what the KPIs are that Nike expects rather than what KPIs are across the industry. And he's, we just kind of turn to him and say, I'm worried about this building, give me some baselining data. So 60–70% of his time is dedicated to 7SIGNAL. And then a backup for him who's spending about 20% of his time, but he's also spending time coming up to speed. The rest of the team, as we bring on new buildings, bring up the eyes themselves. So, I wouldn't consider that, FTEs dedicated to the tool. And I think we, again, are really proactive and could manage the tool without someone quite so dedicated to it. Once set up, it's not that cumbersome. I can go in and pull reports myself, but and anyone on my team can. But we really want to leverage the tool as much as possible. So I do dedicate a lot of time to it.
Swing it back to you, Don.
Thanks a lot, Jim, Shannon, and Mark, and Rocky. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.